I'm Claudia Catania, and you're listening to Playing on Air. You're about to hear Camberwell House by Amelia Roper. It stars 5-time Tony nominee Dana Ivey. And now, Camberwell House, a short play for one woman, Annie, age 75. The inside of Annie's apartment, a faint smell of roses and old perfume. It's around the year 2000, a new century for those who noticed.
Olive says she understood life the day she understood furniture. It must have been when she was young. She didn't say. We were talking on the stairs. People talk on stairs, not the sort of talk you need to clarify, not the sort of talk you need at all, really. But, well, it's just good to know someone's there when you're 75 and on stairs. Olive says she ran into the kitchen running from a boy, or called in by her mother. She must have been a child running in a kitchen. Her mother threw a spoon at her. Her mother threw a spoon at her in front of her father, in front of a lady from the church who laughed. She saw them all sitting, laughing, and she saw the chairs they sat on, and she saw the truth about furniture. She saw that they did not sit down because chairs were there, but that the chairs had been designed, built, and bought out of a desire to sit down. This discovery, like the best of discoveries, led to others. The table had things on it, things not bought to go on the table, but the table bought for somewhere to put the things. Cupboards were the same, beds too, cups and plates, and even clothes pegs. Good God, was everything in her house for a reason? Perhaps it was. Not that there weren't exceptions. Plates were plates, but her mother had some plates hanging on the wall. Why? Why is this something people do? And her mother had a good chair where no one was allowed to sit. The good chair was in the good lounge where no one was allowed to go. Is this because they were bad? Or just not good enough? So I think what Olive was trying to tell me that day on the stairs is that sometimes chairs are built to sit in, and sometimes plates are bought to eat off, and sometimes they're not. Olive doesn't have very much furniture. None of us do. But what she has, she completely understands. Olive lives at the top of the stairs, 2A, next to me, 2C. And of course we do. Of course we live up here. If we didn't, we wouldn't have been talking on the stairs. And if we were talking on the stairs, when our rooms are down there, you might wonder why. Where were we going? What were we up to? You might even follow us. If you were Mr. Avery, you would follow us. You would write it down in a notebook. Where are they going? What are they up to? Some days, Olive says, Mr. Avery is a poet. And I say, Mr. Avery is not a poet. He just writes down everything we say in his notebook. Nothing we say is poetry. And Mr. Avery writes this down, and Mr. Wu, learning his English from cassette tapes, says, I have eaten the plums that were in the icebox? And Mr. Avery groans. And Mr. Wu, with his earphones on, rewinds and replays his cassette. I have eaten the plums. And Mr. Avery says, I don't like what plums do to me inside. And we leave the men to their cassette tapes and their notebooks, and we climb the stairs slowly, arm in arm. And Olive invites me in for dinner. And I say no. We've been friends for years and years, Olive and I. Never miss a Christmas or birthday, despite our finances. I give her library books. She has to return them 3 weeks later, but they are always beautifully wrapped and well chosen. A little money goes a long way if you are careful. I might live for years and years if I am careful. Careful not to eat any of Olive's cooking. My mother lived for years, and now I'm older than she ever was, and that's a strange thing, to be older than your own mother. If there is a heaven, and if I go, the twins will be 5 and 18, my mother will be 70, my father 17. My Tom will be 36. And what will he think of me? I will be the oldest, the matriarch, not because I was born first, but because I died last, which is a much greater achievement, don't you think? How old will Olive be? Younger than me, I imagine. She has trouble on the stairs. We climb them together when we can, and then we drink tea and eat biscuits as a reward for being so old. Olive baked gingernut biscuits this morning. There's a plate of them on my front mat. She knocked, but I pretended not to be in because Olive is trying to kill me. I didn't want to believe it at first, but it does seem that way, unfortunately. All my fault. Something we did when we were young. Something we said when we were nurses together. At 20, being old seemed like the worst possible thing to happen to a person. At 20, being 30 seemed like the worst possible thing to happen to a person, second only to babies. Before we knew worse things, of course. Before my brother left his legs in France. Before, well, this and that. You know. So Olive and I, we made an agreement. If we were still alive at 75, we would knock each other off. We'd do it in secret and with as little pain as possible. Whoever got in first, well, lucky for the other one. Who would want to live past 75? I had an apartment near a woman who was 75, and you never wanted to get stuck behind her on the stairs. Hours it took her, more when it was cold. 6 flights, not one like here. 6 flights, and now I think, gosh, a woman like that doing 6 flights a day, what a woman! What a wonderful triumph against everything that hurts when you are an old woman. So many things. 6 flights. Last August, when I was still 74, I remembered all this, and thank goodness I did. So much life spent trying not to die, you see? I'd almost forgotten. Olive remembered too, but I told her I didn't want any part of it. We were young and foolish when we said it, and what did we know about life then? We knew nothing at all. Just like you now. I still do the stairs quite well, thank you. I've only fallen once, and that was on Mr. Avery's cat, who was already dead, no matter what he tells you. I enjoy small things. I like cinnamon on my toast. I like remembering to turn my electric blanket on early. I also quite like remembering to turn it off, which I didn't last night, and that was unpleasant. I will be more careful in future. Olive likes things too. Olive likes to do the same things most days because Olive's memory is going. She doesn't remember that her husband is dead. She doesn't remember that gingernut biscuits hurt my teeth. She doesn't remember that her youngest son left his legs in Vietnam and is shocked each time she sees him. What is it with men leaving their legs all over the place? Olive only remembers how things were. The chairs you sit on and the ones you don't. She remembers the agreement we made when we were 20, but she doesn't remember August when I changed my mind. Yes, you see, now you understand. A bit of a mess, really. A shame. Olive is such fun. Last week we had a sherry together on her mother's good chair. We talked about the women in our book group and why we don't like them. Mr. Wu came rushing in and said, "There has been an earthquake, and we must go far from here. The dogs and the rabbits, they have already left. How did they know?" It's his phrase for the day. He had a sherry too, and we all sat very still, knowing that right then all was well in the world. And if we were quiet, it might stay that way. Just a little longer. But it didn't. And the moment I got up to leave, she hit me with the frying pan. Mr. Wu lives in 1C, under me. Mr. Wu says if I'm ever alone and I fall and I call out, he will hear me through the floor and he will save me. He says even if I fall and don't call out, he might still save me. He might still hear the thump, he says. If I fall very hard, he says, I might be lucky. But Mr. Wu wears large earphones listening to his cassette tapes, wandering up and down the small hall. So we shall see. Sometimes when I think she's about to hit me, I ask Olive if she remembers our little agreement. "Yes," she says. "That old thing, so long ago." "Yes," I say, "so long ago, I don't want any part of it now. I am happy. I want to be 90. And most days when I tell her I want to be 90, she says, "Oh," and looks a little disappointed. Once I told her, as I was about to take a sip of tea, she said, "Then you probably shouldn't drink that." So, don't eat the ginger nuts on your way out. Who knows what she put in them? The quiche finished off Mr. Avery's cat, died on the stairs. That was why I tripped over him. Olive has fallen a few times now, not on cats specifically, just, as people do. She has trouble on the stairs. Sometimes she sits halfway down, waiting for me to come home. On those days, all she can do is cry and say, "I wish I'd had a daughter to look after me." She'll say, "What is an old woman meant to do all day?" She'll say, "What am I meant to do all day?" She'll say, "All the best things are gone." I will visit Olive tomorrow. I will tell her about the cat. I will tell her how I left my electric blanket on and dreamed of being lost in the desert. I will take the gingernut biscuits. I will tell her I baked them myself, that I baked them for her. She won't remember. I'll do this because she doesn't have a daughter to look after her. She only has me. And we had an agreement.
You just heard Camberwell House by Amelia Roper, starring Dana Ivey. I wish Amelia could have joined us. Amelia Roper, playwright, but she's in Los Angeles writing for Glow and other projects, including a new play for New York Theater Workshop. Dana Ivey, Amelia asked what you thought of her play, and I wonder what occurred to you when you first read it, when you reread it, and then as a result of working on it today. What was that journey?
When I first read it, I thought, what an interesting, odd little piece. It sort of didn't make a complete sense to me when I first read it, just reading it through, but working on it, and as we worked on it, it became much more comprehensible and became deeper. The situation became so real and tender in a way, and just grew by leaps and bounds in my imagination the more I worked on it.
What about Annie's character resonated with you?
I think the contrast between her factual assessment of life and the love she has for her friend and the painful quandary she's in about the agreement they've made.
Amelia told me that audiences at performances of Camberwell House were oddly similar in that older spectators laughed a lot, middle-aged audience members felt uncomfortable, like running home to telephone their elderly parents, and that younger viewers cried. What do you make of that?
I think that's so interesting. It's sort of the 7 ages of man, how we see things so differently at different ages. Becoming an old person now myself, I see great humor in some of the things that I think at another time I either wouldn't have understood or would have, disdained. It's true that the experiences of our lives teach us things that give us a perspective on things that we didn't have when we were younger. So we have such different responses to things.
I read that your mother was an actress.
Yes.
And that John Huston, who is a towering filmmaker of dozens of 20th century classics, he's the son of Walter Huston, the father of Angelica Huston, that he called your mother one of the 3 or 4 greatest actresses in the world.
Well, either in the world or the United States, one or the other. They were working on Wise Blood, which was shot in Georgia, where my mother lived at the time.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And what did you think of your mother as an actress?
Oh, I grew up seeing my mother on stage. I saw my mother play in Joan of Lorraine, play St. Joan when I was like 10. And of course, it was magical. It was just gorgeous. It was such an unusual thing to have a mother who was also a licensed speech therapist and who would correct my speech and my diphthongs as a Southerner and help to give me insights into things. I feel very lucky to have had that extra kind of something from a mother that has really stood me in good stead as an actress.
So she taught you a lot.
She did teach me a lot. Yes, she did.
Well, you're also a great actress.
Well, thank you.
Needless to say. Can you share a 1-minute masterclass with the world right now? What would you say are the most important 3 things an actor should know?
Wow, I wish I'd had a little time for that. Well, they should know how to use their instrument, body and voice. They should know history and dramatic literature, and they should know how to use their imagination.
Good advice. One can go to a wine class to learn how to better judge wine. Can one learn how to better judge a performance?
Well, do you mean as an actor within the performance or as a viewer, as a critic?
I actually meant as a spectator, as a viewer, as a critic.
I think that we all respond intuitively to authenticity. And I think that you can learn to be more aware through experience of what strikes you and what doesn't as authentic, because that's what actually engages us. So I think you can learn with experience. I'm not sure it can be actually taught, but maybe it can.
Well put. Your father was a physicist.
Yes.
Did he influence you?
In many ways, but totally having nothing to do with the theater. He was a nuclear physicist, and for years I thought it would be fun to go into computer science. His scientific background has influenced me tremendously in terms of logic and my insatiable curiosity. I'm a great discoverer, explorer. I like to learn things. And music. He played the piano. I love music, and so I think he influenced me in a lot of ways that actually dovetail with the things I learned from my mother. Sort of left brain, right brain sort of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You've got it all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I feel honored to have you and hope to see you again soon.
Thank you. It's been fun.
Thanks. You've been listening to Playing on Air, Great American Short Plays with Great American Actors. Assistant producers, Rachel Creedberg and Adithya Pratama. Marketing and Education Manager, Shelley Horwitz. Development, Lila Becker. Assistant to the Artistic Director, Eric Judson. Theme music, Tom Cochan. Recording and sound design, John Kilgore. Audio editing, Rachel Creedberg. Playing on Air is distributed by PRX, Public Radio Exchange. For Playing on Air, I'm your host, Claudia Catania. Thanks for listening.